All right. Hello. Welcome.
Hello,
I'm so
thank
excited
you.
for everyone who is here. I'm just going to double check and make sure that we are live in the right place. Here we go. So, one of the things I'm super excited about this year is that we're having people come in and talk about things that they're passionate about so that they can help us. And I am like many of you, I have a child who absolutely loves art. However, I am not. I was I'm not an artsy mom, and I never really knew how to teach it. Every platform, every program, every book, nothing was really sparking her imagination and getting her excited about art. And then I met Jody. Jody and I have been connected online. Oh my word, has it been 4 years?
Yeah, I think I have.
I
Yeah.
think you had just launched your site, and
Yep.
I just opened the group. So they were pretty close. And Jody makes art simple and fun. But my favorite part is she makes it simple and fun for mom. I
Mhm.
don't have to know what my kids are talking about. I don't have to understand what they're saying, but I can still encourage them to have fun with art. So I'm going to let Jody introduce herself and talk a little bit about what she does. And then we'll get to the questions that you guys asked about how to include art in your homeschool.
Wow, Jen, thanks. Those are all such kind words. My name's Jody. Years ago, I was a public school art teacher. So I've taught public school, private school. I was the education director at our local art center, homeschool classes, kind of had done it all. And then when I had my oldest son, stopped working for a while. And we were a public school family for many years. And then when my oldest was about sixth grade and my youngest was not in school yet, we became a homeschool family. So I've been homeschooling my 4 kids in some manner for the last 5 years. About 4 years ago, I started the Kitchen Table Classroom, a blog that just gives me a creative outlet, and it gives me a way to take the information that I really love, I enjoy putting together, and helping other moms to be able to make art with their kids in their own home.
Yeah,
So,
and it's a great site. If you haven't visited Jody's site, I highly encourage you to pop over there. All of her, sorry, all of her art projects are simple. That's what I love. Most of them use things that are around your house. So you don't have to go out and purchase all these high-end products. You can if you want to, but I noticed one of my favorite products that she has that we've used together. It's how we eased into our homeschool year, which is a really great I don't have a link for it, but I'll get it for you guys later. It's the growth mindset with
yep.
art. What's it called, Jody?
You got it. It's growing a growth mindset through the creative arts.
That's it.
Kind of
And
quirky.
it's an amazing course for easing into your homeschool year. That's how we did it. And my daughter and I did it together, which was really great because I am awful at drawing and I'm not creative. And so it really allowed her to see me fail and mess up and make mistakes. And we got to laugh about it. We really had a lot of fun. And I think it would be perfect for this time of the year because we're going through right now something that is kind of historical. I've never seen anything like that happen. And our kids have these great big questions and these feelings, and they don't know how to process them. My kids are older. They're 16 and 18, when you forget how old your kids are, guys. 16 and 18, but they still have questions and they're still, they have anxiety and they have fears that we have, but processing them is hard. So if you can do a project of art side by side and you're sitting there with them, it gives them that opportunity to open up and express how they feel and ask the questions without someone facing them and feeling judgmental. And I absolutely love that product. I will get you guys that link later. It's affordable, it's fun, it's easy, it's no work for a mom, which is big in my book. So the last thing I need is something else to do. And you use household items. I don't think I had to buy anything for that entire course. It was everything I had in the house. So that's my advertisement for Jody's course. I just love it. It's so great. And I think mindset's one of those things that most parents aren't really sure how to teach. Like how do you ask those questions in a comfortable way where your kids are going to open up? So what made you I know I'm totally throwing you a question, but what made you develop this course? Like, what was your reason?
That growth mindset is just something that I talk about like over and over and over with my kids. And just like you said, I think some of the projects in that course are so simple. They use really basic materials, and I'm just trying to give you prompts and kind of activities to engage in that are, of course, about making art and being creative, but just as much about prompting a conversation between mom and kid.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I love it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get into the questions that you guys asked. So hopefully you guys are tuning in. If not, because I know some of you are really busy this time of the day, there will be a replay. I'm going to upload this to a couple different places and I will email the link out. But I'm going to ask your questions, and I realized I didn't grab the names. So I apologize for the people who asked the questions. I will try to guess. Anyways, the first question that a lot of moms ask is, they view art as something that's extra. You know, it's an extracurricular, it's an add-on to your homeschool, or something to do when you have time. And I know, because that's how I felt for years. It wasn't something that was really vital. You know, it wasn't math or English or science, which are always considered vital. So why do you feel as an art teacher that it's important for kids to learn art?
I love that question, because as a teacher in the public schools, I was literally called an extra teacher, a special teacher. You know, and it's extra in terms of it will not be on a standardized test. So in that way, I know it's easy to view it as being outside of what's absolutely necessary. But for me, and I have 4 kids, so I see their personalities, you know, reflect this in a different way. But for me, art isn't extra because, not because you're raising artists necessarily, but because you want to raise creative thinkers. And art is just so good at helping your kids to see different solutions to things and how to think outside of the box. Art teaches your kids just how to see the beauty in every day, whether they're super talented at making art or at seeing the beauty in art that other people made. I think is also a really valid skill, in seeing what's worthwhile out there, even that they didn't make themselves. The fact that it's extra, that it's not going to be on any standardized test, should make it that much more fun. There's no pressure to accomplish certain, you know, certain skills at a certain level, like we sometimes feel with the academic subjects, that you can literally just do it for the joy, do it to connect with your child, do it to give them that gift of having that creative outlet.
One thing I've noticed, because I have one child who's artsy in that way and creative with like, and then she uses those same skills to do cake decorating, and she uses those same skills to overcome problems. And the other one isn't, he writes. Not that I've ever read any of his books. I'm not allowed, but he writes. And so his, you know, his way of thinking is a little bit different, but that's also artist. And I think sometimes people don't see art as creative writing and creative drawing in the same way, but they should, because they're both beneficial skills and they teach our kids so many things.
Totally. And I think looking at your kid, as a homeschool mom, we tend to know our kids and we know how they learn. I have 4 kids. I have 2 that really enjoy creative things, and both in their own way, totally different things that they love doing, and 2 that are more kind of right-brained, logical thinkers. And, you know, they don't like making messes and doing some of the stuff that I like to do, but they are super creative in their own ways. And, you know, just trying to appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. All right, so the second question is, now that we've decided that art is going to be important, what is the best way to introduce art to kids?
So you homeschool moms, you guys know your kids. So to me, the best way to introduce art is just to meet your kid where they're at. You know their interests, you know the things that they're really good at, their strengths, that for those initial experiences, not to worry about accomplishing any specific art goals, but just your goal is to have them have an enjoyable experience. something that they love doing. So if there's an interest that they have, something, a subject matter that you want to focus on, or a specific material that kind of piques their interest, or, you know, maybe a certain process they really love, whether it's, you know, building sculptures or fabric dyeing, or maybe it's some really specific thing like that. Start there. Start wherever they show just a little bit of interest, and give them an experience that's really fun, that really suits their capabilities and their interests, and then build from there. So not to worry about having this like well-rounded curriculum when you start, but just to start, kind of.
So we have a comment, and it says Facebook user. So I'm going to flip over. It is Erin. And so Erin says, my little one lives and breathes creativity. She's total messy, artsy kid, while my oldest is analytical, scientific-minded individual. Yeah, I am more of, I don't like messes. Actually, both of my kids surprisingly never liked things like finger paints or anything that got messy. And so in your mindset course, there's some where you have to get your fingers. And we were like, I don't want to do it. But we did it because it was in the course. And it was fun.
Right.
It's not okay to let your kid kind of overcome that.
Absolutely.
Initial resistance, like, I'm not doing that. But we did it. And, you know, now they know. I don't like this. And I did like this.
And they survived.
That's right. And I had to push myself because, you know, we have to set the example.
Oh, right.
It's important.
Totally.
All right. So the third question is, what mistakes should we avoid when teaching art in our homeschool? So what shouldn't we do?
So I think the biggest mistake that you could have teaching art is just being too rigid with your expectations of your child's behavior while you're making, too rigid for what the project should look like when it's done, too rigid for them following your step-by-step directions, just to kind of go into it a little loosey-goosey, knowing that like whether you're following one of my lesson plans or wherever you get your art curriculum or your projects, your ideas, just to know those in my mind are like starting points. Those are where you get your ideas to teach your kids. And then you're going to use your ideas that you have, and your kids are going to have their totally own interpretations of those as well. And that their art should be super personal to them. And it's okay if, you know, after step 2, they veer off and kind of want to do their own thing. To me, that's totally acceptable. As an art teacher, like those projects where you follow those steps super rigidly and you don't give your kids any choices, those projects, when they're done, don't tend to be things that your kids are really excited about, excited about or proud about because they didn't have a say in them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Those are excellent points, because I think it's so easy to get sucked into, okay, step 1 says this, step 2 says this, and, you know, you have to do it that way. But art is different, right? And I love that you encourage your kids to go ahead and, you know, veer off into whatever catches their eye.
Yeah. And the other fun thing about that is, so if they do it and they veer off and they do their own thing, a lot of times that will then spur other ideas, you know, where they think of something else they want to make or a different way they want to do it next time. But if you can give your kids a little bit of that freedom, you give them the starting point, then give them a little freedom, you know, they're going to that creativity will just snowball.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so the next question comes from me. I was reflecting back and I was thinking, I know I'm not alone, because we've had conversations about glitter and such before. And so I was saying that I'm not an artsy mom. I'm not crafty. I detest glitter in all forms. You know, when my kids were little, or my daughter was little, it would have glitter on their shoes, and you would find that stuff everywhere. And my kids, you know, they're not into hands-on messy stuff. So they've never made slime. They don't like finger paints. So what tips and tricks would you have for a mom like me with kids of all ages, how to include art in your homeschool? How do you get them excited if they're not into making messes? And
Well, there's lots of fun things that don't include glitter. So no worries there. And everybody has their own tolerance level for messes. I know, Jen, when I watch you on Facebook and your kids are in the kitchen and they're cooking with you, and I'm like, oh, I really want to be that mom. Like the kitchen, I have trouble like letting go of and getting messy and enjoying that there. But an art mess, you know, I'm a woman, I can live with that. So we all have our own things. And I think that's totally okay just to go into it knowing like some things you're going to enjoy and some things are just, you know, not your thing, and that's okay. But what I would say to encourage you to start is that art class doesn't necessarily have to be hard. It doesn't necessarily have to take a long time. Sometimes it might be 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I know you mentioned I try really hard with my lessons on my site to just use basic supplies. Like if you went to the store and you bought markers and watercolor paints, glue, construction paper, some of that stuff, that really basic stuff that you could buy for, you know, $10 or $15, that you could do the majority of lessons on my site with just those things. So my recommendation would be, you know, get yourself a little basket, put those basic things in it. And then as you're going through your day, and I don't even always think you need to have this planned out ahead of time, but part of that is just my personality. When you need a break with your kids, you know, you have a couple of ideas, a couple of options, and you've got that basket. And maybe one day it's as simple as, you know, kind of a craft. So crafting to me tends to be more step oriented, where a real art experience is more open ended and lets your kid make a few more decisions. Maybe one day it's a craft. There is nothing wrong with crafting. I think it teaches kids sequencing and it teaches them fine motor skills. Maybe the next day you have a little bit more time and you want to do more of a process art activity where they can, you know, just experience some of those different things that have to do with art. Maybe on a day you're really busy. I have lots of lessons where I'm actually teaching the lesson, both embedded in my posts and as part of my curriculum, my courses, like Jen was mentioning, where I teach your child step by step. So maybe some days, you know, you take a step back, your kiddo has that basket of materials and they can just sit down and make. Sometimes I think that's a really nice break for mom and kid. For mom, I know there are other subjects where I am so grateful to be able to take a step back and have somebody else kind of take the reins. Maybe that's an option for some of those days too.
Yeah. And it works great, especially if it's video, because your kid can argue with that teacher all day and that teacher never minds.
For real.
They just keep teaching. So it's great if you have, you know, kids who question or you need a break. Because let's be honest, mom, you know, we're, especially now, we're home.
Yeah.
We are with our family. And even the closest, most loving families that get along are bound to hit that point where it's like, okay, I need 10, 15 minutes. And, you know, you don't want your kids getting into things, depending on the age, of course. So pulling out that basket and saying, here, play with something. And one thing I will recommend is if you don't like art messes, we actually use this when we're baking too, is get a cheap tablecloth, put it over your table. I get those plastic ones that you can wipe off really easy, or even a cloth one you can throw in the washer. When they're done, you just roll it up, throw it, and you're done. The mess is cleaned up. So, you know, make it simple and easy for you.
Totally.
Okay, so one question that came from, and I thought I had the name, but I don't see it on my list. So, mom says, my kids have high anxiety and struggle with perfectionism. What tips can you share that will help us help them?
Okay, so I actually have a blog post about art for the perfectionist kid that I can try to link that later. But here's my answer for that. So when you're making art, there's two ways to think about it. That you have a product that you want to get to. You're trying to get to this end product, right? And your steps get you to that product. Or you can talk about the process of making art and getting to that end point. So if you have a kid that is a perfectionist, a couple of tips I have would be, don't even talk about what it's supposed to be when it's done. Don't show them an example of what it's done, of what it looks like when it's done. Sometimes, I know I have a child like that, and sometimes when she works next to me, I don't even do the same thing as her because she's comparing hers to mine.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll work side by side, but we'll work on different things. And so process-oriented art focuses on the ideas of what you're experiencing as you're making it, and what it looks like when it's done is not so important. So I have a list in that blog post, and I can try to link it later, of different process art activities that are really good for kids like that.
Okay, yeah, because it's hard as a parent, especially when you don't really know what to say and they're getting frustrated and they're, making the lines and they're erasing them and then they crumple it up and they throw it because they're frustrated with themselves, right? They have an idea in their head, and sometimes getting that idea out on paper is totally different, right? So they haven't, and then they feel like, well, I'm capable, I should be able to do this, but I can't. And that can really erode their self-confidence. So it's hard to know as a parent, what to say or how to step in and help them. So I love the idea of them not seeing the end result. So they don't know what it's supposed to look like. And where you said you're working on two different things, because we do, right? It's a natural thing to look over and see what the other person's doing. Yeah.
And one more tip to that is kind of what we talked about that first subject is, your kid really well. I think it can be really helpful and easy as a homeschool mom, because you know your kid so well, to balance out the experiences that they have with experiences that they're going to be successful at, things where it's going to come easily and they're going to feel like they did a great job, with things that are maybe a little bit more challenging and push them a little bit more.
Yeah. That's really good. And I'm going to just step in and say one thing is, some of you might be watching this and we keep saying, your kid so well. And you're like, no, I don't. And I want to tell you that's perfectly normal, because kids change lightning fast.
On a minute-by-minute basis, right?
Oh, my word. So if you're in that spot where you're like, well, actually, I don't know my kids, don't panic. It's okay.
So true.
We've all been there. But you still know your kids better than you probably think you do.
Absolutely.
Because their visual cues, like maybe they're not saying I'm frustrated, but the look on their face, the way that they're acting, you can start seeing. And I think when you start seeing those frustrations, at least in other subjects, that's when I usually step in and ask, let's take a break. It kind of gives them a chance to step back and kind of calm down. So when we see those things happening with our kids and we see them getting frustrated, I really want you to share that post. I'll get it from you later and I'll put it in, because I think we need, as parents, we need something. We're groping for a way to help them. And I think those tips are great. So, not letting them see the end, but when we see them getting frustrated, step back and give them a few minutes. Chill. Okay, so last question. What advice do you have for getting started with? And so this is for each age group. So do you have different tips for little ones, middles, and teens, or something maybe that works for all ages? What would you say to a mom who's trying to get started with art, doesn't really know anything they haven't already mentioned?
Well, I guess a couple of things that I would say that would pretty much work across the board. And I know this is something as a homeschool mom that I use for other subjects too, is just leaving stuff out. Leave different materials, different books, maybe even, I know my daughter and I share Pinterest boards, different things there that might be things that they might be interested in, and see what strikes them. For little kids, just leaving an area set up with some of those prompts, I think is a really great idea. Whether you have a little table or a corner of your kitchen table, just with some different prompts. Maybe they change daily or weekly. And then once, you know, they kind of jump in, then you can take the lead from there and maybe find some projects that capitalize on their interests. I think that could be true from any age. What was the rest of the question?
I just said about different age groups. So
Okay.
One thing I loved that you talked about was leaving it out. And I think parents, especially because we are homeschooling parents, is to include art in other subjects.
Absolutely.
So, you know, if the lesson says write an essay and your kids hate writing, you know, you could have them draw a picture, you could have them do a craft, you can have them do research and do digital art, which is like slides and things. I know one of the free courses you're offering is your new one. That's until Thursday, right?
It is. Yep.
What's the date? The 23rd.
Let's see. Today is the 23rd, and you can get that one for free until the 26th.
Yeah. So, you know, that gets kids who are maybe not into hand drawing. Is that even a word? Like doing art on paper, but prefers to be creative. And I think people underestimate the artistic value of online arts, you know, like creating things online, whatever that's called. What is that called?
Graphic design, digital
design.
But I agree so wholeheartedly with that. Just giving your kids multiple ways to be creative. I have some comic book templates on my site that are super popular. Like you mentioned, writing a research paper might be painful, but turning that into an illustrated graphic novel, you know, might really be up your kid's alley. Or the digital design, taking that hand sketching element out and allowing them to use, you know, some predetermined elements and put them together in different ways, just opens up a whole new avenue for that creative expression. Yeah. That again, I think can really build a lot of confidence in some kids that might otherwise kind of hold back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think those are great ideas because, you know, a lot of us have struggling writers or readers, and even pulling out art things when you're listening to audiobooks or reading aloud, if you like to do that, can give your kids that chance to process what they're hearing. I know a lot of kids like to doodle while they're listening, and some parents get really frustrated, like, oh, they're not paying attention. And that's not true. They're processing. Right? So that helps them, the movement helps them process what they're hearing. So
totally.
All right. Well, that was a lot of great information packed into a very short time. So I highly encourage everyone to go back and listen. I will send out a link. Oh, and she has a discount code or a coupon code for those of you who have tuned in. I'll put that on, and I'll also copy it over into the comments or description of the post. You guys can use that coupon code in any of Jody's products on her site. That is my affiliate link. So thank you for your support. But I like all her courses, but I will say my absolute favorite one is the Mind Growth one. So there's tons of freebies though on her own website. It's a really great resource, and probably one of my favorite websites to visit. It's really fun. I spend so much time online. I don't go to a lot of other websites. And there are maybe a handful of people that I read all their content. And Jody has been such an encouragement for moms like me who have these kids who I want to encourage them. I think art is so important to our kids for processing and dealing and learning. And I just love the creative spark and excitement she gets when she creates something new. But I never know how to help. And I always feel so helpless. So when I go to Jodys Site, I don't feel helpless anymore. So thank you so much for joining us and providing us with all these wonderful resources. If any of you guys are watching the replay and you have questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments of this video. I will be popping in, and Jody she's in the group all the time. She's a hard-working admin, so I'm sure she'd be happy to answer your questions and point you in the right direction. So thanks so much for hanging out with us during this social distancing fun. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you, Jody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.